Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So, today's podcast is something a bit different, something a bit more unique. Obviously, Cooper is away on a holiday, so we're wishing him all the best for his trips, and I am extremely jealous. But besides that, today we'll be doing a bit more of a movie reviews of the past two films that I have seen in cinemas, which is The Ballerina from the world of John Wick and Bring Her Back, which is another A24 horror flick from two Australian directors who are absolutely phenomenal. And so don't forget to like and subscribe, share it with a friend, and yeah, come and join the chat down below if you guys have seen this film or these films and what you thought of them. It's going to be a bit different in terms of how I'm structuring this. Obviously, I'm on my own, so it is purely going to be my opinion, perspective, and all that kind of jazz. So it'd be great to see how you guys kind of like these films if you have seen them or if you're thinking about seeing them or if it's not kind of your cup of tea. So I'll talk about the first one that I watched most recently, which was a couple of nights ago. So I did watch the new Ballerina movie from the world of John Wick, which is set between John Wick Chapter 3 and 4. And I'm going to keep away from spoilers for both of these films. So it's going to be a bit more brief, a bit more of kind of my recommendations, what I liked about them, what I maybe didn't like about these films. So with the Ballerina film, it is absolutely unreal in terms of how they kind of connect it to the other ones. So it doesn't feel forced in the sense that it doesn't feel out of place. This movie is directed by a different director than the ones who did the other John Wick movies. So I was hesitant going into this film in terms of if it's going to live up to kind of the John Wick franchise. But I did obviously see the critic reviews and the audience ones before seeing it. I was a couple of days late from its release, and it was fairly positive. So I was going in with not high expectations, but higher than I probably would have if I didn't look at them. And yeah, what can I say? Holy, the action is great as always. The pacing is really good for a 2 hour, just over 2 hour film. So quite long in terms of an purely action based film. Anna does amazing as this action star, and you get more of the Roscoe Roma, which I think is unreal because they were just one of the most intriguing and entertaining factors of John Wick Chapter 3, in my opinion. And you do get to see a tie-in. Obviously, if you've seen the trailers, you see that John Wick himself will be in this film, and I think you get more of him than probably what most people would assume. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler. It's a bit more of just a tease, I think. They blend kind of the action with the pacing quite well. So every kind of action scene is progressing to the next scene, which is kind of like what happens with John Wick Chapter 3 and 4. However, in John Wick Chapter 3 and 4, I did find myself feeling like it was purely just action and no story. And this one does fall into that kind of category, in my opinion, where the story is your basic revenge plot, which kind of is how the whole John Wick franchise began with John Wick's dog and kind of his wife, late wife in the first one. So he kind of has that motivation. And this one's fairly straightforward, fairly the same. And we do get another appearance of Lance Reddick. So rest in peace to him. He's a phenomenal actor, and it was really amazing to see him in this again with Winston and the Continental, and it is great. And this whole world, even the Continental show, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. It wasn't the best. It's definitely my least favorite in terms of all the films and that show together. It did have some promising moments, especially in the first few episodes, but then it did kind of have a pretty bad finale, I think, in my opinion, and it didn't really live up to the legacies of the John Wick films. And I think this one here does a phenomenal job in terms of fitting into this kind of franchise and world, whilst expanding it a little bit more too. I do think the villains in this film wasn't, I wouldn't say bad, but like they weren't kind of intriguing in terms of like the ones that we got from the other ones. They were very generic and kind of basic, but I guess that's what you need in terms of for a John Wick film. It's not really about the antagonist; it's a bit more about the protagonist, which is amazing in this film. Her name's Eve, I believe. I remember if I remember correctly. Um, but yeah, the sceneries, the shots, the fight scene. There's a particular one with grenades and a flamethrower, which is absolutely unreal. Like I think seeing a bit more of a different kind of fight scene within this franchise is great because the John Wick films typically he relies on his obviously martial arts skills, but predominantly his gun combat. Which this one here, I think, because they're trying to differentiate her from John, which I think is perfect, and the way she kind of uses her environments around her to be a bit more of her weapon rather than her skills with knives or guns or something, which she still is amazing with. But the grenade and the flamethrower scenes were top notch. I did think they were. I thought coming into this there would be nothing really that rivals kind of your Dragon's Breath gun sequence in John Wick 4, Chapter 4. And I wouldn't say it's better what we saw in this one than that one, but it is up there. And I think this film, in terms of my ranking, this could be controversial. So you guys can let me know down below if you guys have seen the John Wick movies, what your ranking is. But mine probably has to go Chapter 4, Chapter 1, Chapter 3, this one, then Chapter 2, and then the Continental. Look, Chapter 2 is an iffy one for me. I don't hate the film. I just think it is kind of like the first one, but just worse. And I didn't really care for it that much in terms of I didn't have as much of a connection with John's kind of plot and character development than he had in the first one. This one kind of was just like a filler one, in my opinion, when Chapter 3 and 4 raised the stakes highly. And I think this is where Chapter 3 and 4, it depends on how I'm feeling. They do swap over at times, but Chapter 4 sequences, like it's just so much cool. And I love the Japanese aesthetic, and I love how they use swords a lot more in 4. This one here, you got a bit of everything. And this is why it's pretty cool. So you got some sword action, you had gunplay, you had grenade play, you had flamethrowers, you had martial arts, you had random utensils, you had a bit of everything. No pencils, no pencils. Sorry to burst anyone's bubbles with that. But yeah, you just had a bit of everything, which I think made it very exciting. And I didn't watch it in like a 40X or a D box, that kind of thing here in Australia. But I could imagine how it must feel in those chairs where you get hit, probably like in terms of it feels like you're immersed within it every time like a shot gets fired or a punch gets hit. I think it would be a pretty cool experience, and I probably would recommend going to that kind of screening if you are thinking about seeing it. I do think it lives up to the franchise and is a step in the right direction in terms of branching out, aside from having John as your main focus. To be fair, I'm not really sure where exactly it fits between 3 and 4, but there is some scenes where you can definitely tell it is bang on in terms of one particular moment in time it was in Chapter 3. And once again, he just has that kind of aura around him, Keanu Reeves, and he's great to see him back in this film. And it would be interesting to see if they do a fifth one, depending on obviously how Chapter 4 ended. It's I don't know. It's up in the air, I think, still. And I'm not really on the side of is it good that it was a good finale, Chapter 4, or was it a bad finale? I don't know. I loved it and I loved the ending of it, but I'm not really sure where it's kind of put us in this position of if there is a possibility for a John Wick Chapter 5. However, this one here clearly shows that if you have the right kind of world building, if you have the right kind of action sequences, you can continue this franchise in terms of how it is. I wish the Continental show was better in terms of how it was done, because I do think it was an interesting kind of connection in terms of diving a bit more deeper into this kind of laws that these kind of bounty hunters and assassins kind of live in. And I still love the old fashioned bounties and the telephones and the papers and everything. It is great, and I do love this world. And I must say that this is a sleeper film in my opinion. And probably, as you could tell by the thumbnail and the title, I do think it is a severely underrated one right now, because I don't hear a lot of people talking about it aside from like, your popular, I guess you could say, or your big movie reviewers. And it's kind of slipped under the radar. Something just come out and it's not got as much attention as the likes of those for Fantastic Four and Superman, which are being advertised almost every 2 seconds I see online, which obviously I'm excited for them too. But I do think if you're wanting just a fun action flick that has great choreography, great cinematography, I would say acting to an extent. Like these movies don't have the best acting, but they're not obviously made for the action. It's made for the action. And I think this is a fantastic action film. And it probably will be, in my opinion, my favorite action film alone for this whole year. It has great set pieces, set design, and it's a fun time for sure. I had an amazing time coming out, really positive about it. So that is my, I guess, if I'd given it a, out of 10 or something like that, I'd probably give it around 8.5. I think my only critical points without going into detail and spoilers about why is probably that some scenes or some localities might you might stay there a bit too long, and it kind of feels like it drags out that part of the movie a bit more. I do think the plot could have had a bit more tightening up in terms of a little bit less of a generic revenge flick. It would have been cool if they added a different layer kind of to that. Other than that, it was what you expect from these kind of films, and I love that. And it's not to say that that's a bad thing. That's definitely a positive coming in thinking that it feels like the other John Wick films. So overall, great time, great. I recommend it, and yeah, go to theaters and see it. Go support the film. Yeah. So moving on to our second movie that I did watch before this one, I watched it at an early screening, so it has been a bit of time. So I have simmered on it a bit, and is Bring It Back, and it's by Danny and Michael Filippo. I can't really pronounce it. Sorry. But they did talk to me, which was my favorite film of that year when it came out. I think it was 23 or 24. I think it one of the two. I love horror. I love psychological horrors. I love cheesy horrors. I love thrillers. I love all that kind of stuff. So going into this one, after Talk to Me, seeing the trailers for this one. Now, so this is interesting. When I saw the trailers for Bring It Back, I was like, doesn't look anything too special. It kind of looks a bit, I don't know, like up in the air. What am I watching? What is this circle around the house? What is the vibe of this film? It doesn't feel like a young adolescent kind of horror like Talk to Me was. And obviously Talk to Me 2 is now in production with A24 and the brothers back at it again, which I'm so excited for. I just can't wait for it. And definitely we'll do a reaction on the channel probably for that when that gets released. But this one here, when the first talk with Talk to Me, with their first main film, obviously coming to theaters, was a lot more of your generic horror. Like, I don't want to say Friday the 13th because hmm, it's like it's got your tropes, I guess you could say. It's got your teen kind of cast or young adult cast. Then you've got a plot device, I guess you could say, that incites these horrific kind of jump scares and thrills, I guess you could say, from it. But this one here is a lot more of a psychological drama. It deals with grief and trauma in a very interesting way. There is some scenes in this one, I think, which rival I can give spoilers for Talk to Me. One of the when the main character's brother. Oh no, yeah, it is the main character. I haven't watched it for a while, but the young brother for one of the characters in Talk to Me who gets I guess you could say possessed by the hand and then does something to his face, and it's very gruesome and gory. This one has a lot of body horror elements to it, which shocked me at first going into it. I wasn't really expecting them to do more body horror type scares, I guess you could say. There was only maybe like one or two jump scares. People talk about jump scares in this one. I don't think they're as like jump scare esque as like your generic ones that you might see in like the Conjuring films or something like that. This one definitely has a lot more of a build up and tension, and it deals with greater themes. And once again, the acting and the actors that they picked for it did an amazing job. The mother was scary, but at the same time comforting, and you could understand her perspective by the end, but not that you agree with it. I'm not agreeing with it whatsoever, but you can understand where she kind of got lost and that kind of concept that she was dealing with. Obviously, she probably didn't grieve or didn't kind of go, she didn't kind of like get support for her trauma and kind of grief of what happened in her past, meaning that she was kind of doing it to and hurting other people in the wake of it. And they follow these two foster kids where she kind of adopts them, and they do a fantastic job in kind of building that suspense and building that tension, and you feel for these characters. And that's the thing in these horror films, like even Hereditary. I love Hereditary, but I don't really care for the characters that much. Maybe it also is because these films have Aussie accents and they're a bit more the set designs, the localities feel familiar, and I think maybe that could be also maybe why I connect to them better because you can see yourself in them in terms of the way they speak, the way they act, the locations. When you watch American horror movies and stuff, for us, I mean, for me personally, you can't really connect to them in terms of um, resonating with it because especially Look, if there was like a talk to me American version in terms of like frat kind of that kind of stuff, you wouldn't. It's not doesn't work the same here, and I think that's the difference. But with these films here, they really set you on the edge of your seat. I never find myself like tuning out or getting bored at any point. I'm like locked in when I'm watching the Danny and Michael's films. I am fully invested, and I feel like I'm always confused at some point or wondering where the story is going. It has me on the edge of the seat, as you might say in movie terms, in terms of what's going to happen next. And then they have that kind of that moment, that shock factor moment that they didn't talk to me with the brother again within this one, and it just it hits and it's gruesome. Like my theater when I was in that sitting in the audience, they were audibly gasping when they saw it. They're like, "Whoa!" You know what I mean? Like it is very like the stuff that they do is practical, and the body horror is crazy, and the storyline's good. You connect with the characters. You want the characters to survive. You want the characters to be safe, and that is what is the main driving factor of this. It's very intimate in terms of Talk to Me had a lot more characters. It had a lot more localities. This one keeps you confined into an area with kind of three-ish main characters, and it feels like you're with them. It feels like you're trapped in that kind of house with them. It feels like you're going through uncovering what's happening with them. And the VHS tapes and everything is so creepy, so haunting. And it starts off with it, and it really puts you in kind of head first into kind of what you're about to witness. And I think it does an amazing job at it. It is a horror movie that I highly recommend, and I hope you guys get to the theaters and watch it because it is great. I love supporting these guys. I love seeing their films. I grew up watching them on YouTube, seeing their Mortal Kombat videos, their Jedi's Star Wars versus Harry Potter videos. It was so good watching them, and now watching them when you're older, doing an actual whole feature length film is so exciting. And they've done it again. It's a great horror movie. I don't know. I don't think I like it better than Talk to Me, but that's because this film is a lot sadder and a lot more. It makes you feel down kind of after it. You don't. I mean, Talk to Me did too, but this one here, you feel like even less hopeful. Like it really does hit you. You know what I mean? And it doesn't leave you with much. What's the word? You get joy out of it, obviously, because you're going in for that kind of thing. But it doesn't leave you inspired. Doesn't leave you like. It's not like when you come out of a Halloween movie or Friday the 13th and they survive Jason type thing. It doesn't get you like, yes, one of them survived. Your generic one survived, or Nightmare on Elm Street, kind of that type of vibe. It does get serious. It tackles greater themes. It's a bit more of a thriller, and I probably psychological horror, thriller, body horror type movie. But once again, another banger of a movie, and this is why I really wanted to do a short kind of little podcast chat, not scripted, just completely off the top of my head about these two films that I do think are sleeper hits of the year so far, because everyone is focused solely in on like the Fantastic Four, Superman, even Jurassic World to an extent, like all these other films that have been kind of talked about and kind of hyped up. When these two, I feel like have just been kind of floating very, very quietly under the radar, and I do think they deserve the light of day because for the genre they're in and for what they're trying to do, they are amazing films. And to give this Bring Her Back a score out of 10, I've got to have to give it a 9. Honestly, it does what it's intended to do very well and shockingly at the same time. I will definitely be picking this one up on Steelbook like I have with Talk to Me. I don't have it right next to me right now, so I can't just grab it. But yeah, highly recommend both these films. I think they're both underrated sleeper hits, or not underrated in the sense that people aren't liking it, more that they're just kind of hiding and not really talked about. They're kind of floating under the radar, and I think they deserve to be kind of more in the media and more hyped up for what they achieve and for what they are. And let me know down below in the comments what you guys think of these films, or if you're planning on checking it out, or even if you don't like them at all. That is purely like discourse in the comments, and it's good to see other people's perspectives. It is hard when you're doing a podcast without your co-host who has other ideas and perspectives on these films and comes in with a different idea or thing that I might have missed. But for me, that's basically it. And these two films, go see them in the theater. They're still running now. Ballerina just came out. Bring It Back's been out for maybe a couple weeks, 3 weeks maybe. End of May it came out. This Ballerina one came out just this week. That's past. So, when this comes out last week. But yeah, go see them. They're great films. I highly recommend them. And once again, as always, guys, we'll see you in the next video. Catches.